Alright, so we are going to start reading chapter 5, but before we do that, I want to just review a little bit. So we have Tom Sawyer, who likes to get people to do his work, right? And he is in love with Becky, right? And they got engaged, but then he told her, like, oh, I was engaged before this, which made Becky unhappy, so they're both heartbroken. Let's see. And the biggest thing that has happened so far is Tom and Huckleberry Finn, or Huck, go to the graveyard and they see Injun Joe stab Dr. Robinson. He first knocked out Muff Potter, then he stabbed Dr. Robinson, and he put the knife in Muff Potter's hand to make it seem that Muff Potter killed the doctor. And Muff Potter was really drunk, and Injun Joe said, oh yeah, you were so drunk, you went crazy and you killed the doctor. And Muff Potter's like, oh no, and he kind of believes him. And Tom and Huck are so scared that Injun Joe is going to find them and kill them if they tell. So they decide to do an oath. An oath is like a promise or a promesa that, hey, we will not tell anybody. So they even they prick their fingers and sign their names in blood. So there you go. That's where we ended last time. So now we're on chapter 5, which is on page 61. And it's titled Tom and His Guilty Conscience. So conscience, is it conciencia? I don't know if that's what it is in Spanish. I'm sorry, I should have looked that up. But it's what is in your brain. It's that voice that is like, oh, that's good or that's bad. Do this, don't do that. So it's your conscience, okay? After the boys said goodbye, so this is that night, Tom and Huck are saying goodbye. Tom returned to his house and crept silently in his bedroom window. He undressed with great care and fell asleep, congratulating himself that no one knew of his adventure. He was not aware that the gentle snoring Sid was awake and had been so for almost an hour. So his half-brother knew that he had been gone. When Tom awoke the next morning, Sid was dressed and gone. Something was wrong. No one had bothered to wake him. Within 5 minutes, he was dressed and downstairs, feeling sore and drowsy. Drowsy is really sleepy. After breakfast, Aunt Polly took Tom aside and wept. She cried a lot. He had broken her old heart. Go on and ruin yourself, she cried. It's no use for me to try and raise you like a good boy. I know you sneaked out last night. Tom pleaded for forgiveness and promised to reform, promised to do better. He was so miserable, he didn't even think of ways of getting even with Sid for telling on him. So getting back at Sid. He didn't think of ways that he could be like, Sid, why did you do that? He didn't even think of that. He moped to school, feeling sad and gloomy. With hardly a sound, he slipped into his seat, his elbow pressed against something hard and cold. He held it up and unwrapped it. A long, lingering sigh followed, and his heart broke. It was his brass doorknob. Becky had returned it. Remember, he gave that doorknob to Becky as a sign of his love, and she gave it back. Tom hardly had time to wallow in his sorrow. By noontime, the whole village was alive with news of Dr. Robinson's murder. Everyone in town was drifting towards the graveyard. Tom's heartbreak over Becky flew away, and he joined the procession. So the group of people going towards the grave, or Dr. Robinson's body. As soon as he reached the scene of the bloody crime, he felt a slight pinch on his arm. It was Huckleberry Finn. They looked into each other's faces and felt tense and uncomfortable because of the secret they shared. Within a few minutes, Injun Joe and Muff Potter appeared. Without a moment's hesitation, Injun Joe told the sheriff a grisly tale, calmly explaining that Muff Potter had stabbed the doctor during a drunken rage. What? So Injun Joe is saying, oh yeah, Muff Potter did it. He's telling that to the police. What? Okay, so one thing you could do, well, yeah, I guess it makes him interesting. So under the character Injun Joe, you could write that he's a liar and he blamed Dr. Robinson's death on Muff Potter. So remember, we're finding things about these characters that we think are interesting. I think it's interesting that he would go so far to say that, to tell the police, oh yeah, Muff Potter did this. He didn't just lie to Muff Potter. He's now telling everybody that Muff Potter was the killer. And we know Muff Potter didn't do it. So we have page 64. So for me, that makes Injun Joe interesting. How he's a liar. Okay? It makes him an interesting character. He's not just like, nothing happens to him the whole book. There's something to this character that makes him kind of crazy. Okay? So that's one example. So remember to be doing that. Okay, page 64. Huck and Tom stood frozen in their tracks as the stony-hearted liar reeled off his story. The boys were astonished. An innocent man was going to hang, and only they could save him. So they're going to possibly hang Muff Potter. Do you guys remember the game we would play called Hangman? Remember that game? So this is going to be Muff Potter. Not good, right? And he didn't kill him. Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll see what happens. Tom's fearful secret and gnawing conscience, so it keeps bothering him, disturbed his sleep that night and every night that followed. After several nights of Tom's moaning and tossing, Sid complained to Aunt Polly. She questioned Tom, but all he said was, "It's nothing, nothing at all." But Sid, who seemed just a bit too concerned, had to say, "But you talk so much, Tom. Last night in your sleep, you kept screaming something about blood and telling somebody something." This made Aunt Polly think that Tom was only having nightmares about the murder, just like other people in the town were. Although Tom nodded his head in agreement, Sid suspected that something much more dramatic was bothering Tom. Every day or two during this time, Tom went to the little jail window and smuggled small gifts to Muff Potter. So he gave small gifts to Muff Potter without anybody knowing. That's what smuggling is. So we have Muff Potter, who's in jail, and Tom giving him things, and the things he would give him, cigars and bits of fruit and food, were silently passed to the prisoner. Muff thanked Tom and figured it was the boy's way of thanking him for the few times they had gone fishing together. But to Tom, these offerings were the only way he had of easing his guilty conscience. Okay, so right there, I think we learned something about Tom. So even though Tom likes to trick people and get people to do his work for him, he has a heart, right? You know what? I'm just gonna write, he has a heart. And the evidence of that, giving Muff gifts. Tom, one of the things that makes him interesting, he has a heart. He's kind. He feels really bad about this Muff Potter thing, but he's scared to tell people that he knows who the real killer is because he's scared that the real killer will kill him. So that's page 66. Did that make sense? So page 66. Okay, there we go. Oh, sorry, I lost my page. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. We're good. All right, we'll see what happens next.